welcome everybody to Tipsy Testing. We're having some fun here on Friday night during coronavirus. We thought it'd be fun to get together and have a drink and talk about testing and end Friday on a happy note. So my name is Jessica Moore. I'm the Customer and Partner Success Manager here at Inflectra, and I will introduce our panelists. We have Adam Sandman, who is the Director of Technology at Inflectra Corporation, where he is interested in technology, business, and innovation. He's been programming since the age of 10. He's been working in the IT industry for the past 20 years, and he's going to tell us a fun fact about himself.
My fun fact was at the age of, actually, I think 8 to 10, I wanted to be learning computers, and my parents were so mean that they didn't want to buy a computer, so I made one out of paper, and my babysitter said, listen, he's spending all night writing something on his paper. Maybe this is important to him, we should buy him one. And my parents were like, oh, computers. Why would you buy him a computer? It'll never amount to anything. I mean, do your homework. This computer stuff, it's going to be a fad. You'll never get a job doing that. And there we go.
Little did they know.
Little do they know.
Our next speaker is Jeff Payne. Jeff is the founder and CEO of Coveros, where he leads the company's strategic direction. He's been in the industry for 30 years, building, testing, and delivering code. He speaks nationally on Agile, DevOps, testing, and DevSecOps. And he's going to tell us a fun fact about himself.
There's no fun facts. It's a rumor. Adam, I can't believe you were doing programming on paper, and your parents wouldn't even help you out. That's really sad. My parents weren't like that, so I wanted to be a video game developer. That's my fun fact when I was a kid, because I loved video games, and my dream was to write video games for Atari. But my parents, when I told them I wanted a computer, they listened to me, unlike your parents, and they bought me one. So I didn't have to pretend with some piece of paper like you did. But that's my fun fact.
I can contribute a fun fact about Jeff, too. Jeff recently discovered Snap Camera. So he's been having a great time this afternoon. And Hugo, too, which leads us into the perfect segue to our next speaker, who is Hugo Sanchez. He is the managing consultant with Coveros and the technical arm of the Coveros Partnership Group, coordinating and delivering services to Inflectra customers. And he is a mechanical engineer by trade. And Hugo fell in love with computers at an early age and switched careers, concentrating on the tools needed to support software development. And he is going to tell us another fun fact about himself, besides the fact that he just got Snap Camera today.
Yeah, so let's see. My first computer was a Sinclair.
Woohoo!
CX Spectrum that had a whopping 48K of memory. But I very quickly found out that that was not enough, so I updated to a Commodore 64 that had much more memory and had a tape drive, a cassette drive where I could store my programs. That was it.
Didn't you also know Grady Booch too? Is that another fun fact?
Yeah, that's a fun fact.
Yes. When I was at Rational Software, I was part of the Rose business unit, and we got the pleasure of working with the three amigos on supporting the UML, and that was a trip.
Didn't you tell me once they wouldn't stay in the same hotel or something? There was some rumor you had to...
Yeah, it was so much about keeping them apart and managing the image. They had very big egos. Grady was really down to earth. The other two had very, very big egos. Yeah.
I want to start the introduction by saying Kim has been the person with whom I've enjoyed working tremendously, probably the most since I started at Inflectra just over a year ago. So I feel like this whole Coveros Inflectra relationship's a really good one, but even if I didn't work with Kim, I feel like I see Kim and hang out with Kim. So I will let Kim take over the rest.
Ditto. Jessica and I will be friends whether there's Inflectra and Coveros or not. But I am Kim Trott. I'm business development at Coveros. Hugo and I are partners in helping Inflectra customers move forward with their products.
Cool.
And I don't have any fun facts.
Yeah, and since you all, Jessica and Kim, since you all are so fond of each other, why don't you all do this webinar and the rest of us will just drink?
We'd rather listen to
How about
you.
that?
That's entertaining.
I don't know if they'd like our answers.
And who knows, maybe after this we will have a webinar
There you go. You
That's
should.
true.
with another drink. Okay, so moving on to the questions. How has teleworking affected your daily work in software development and or testing? Jeff, you want to start?
Yeah, so Coveros is a virtual first company. Means we've been virtual since day one, 12 years ago when we started the firm. So virtual to us is just a way of working. We're used to it. So for us, it hasn't been that big of a change, but for our customers, it certainly has been. We've heard everything from, we can't get VPNs to work because we've never really done that before, to, I can't figure out how to separate work and life. And, all the classic things that you kind of have to deal with when you first go virtual, we've heard from our customers. So it hasn't really changed our business that much because we do a lot of our training and consulting virtually. But definitely our customers and the way they work, it's a new experience for a lot of them.
So you've been especially well suited to your consulting arm now, being able to help people not just set up what they need to set up in DevOps, but also to just get them on the right track in terms of working virtually.
Yeah, absolutely. We've put out some videos and some blogs and some other content with lessons learned and ideas on how organizations can work more effectively virtually, because for some people it is a new thing, right? They haven't experienced it and done it before, and so they're not quite sure how to make it work. So we've tried to put out some content around those kinds of things, and then just help our customers as they're trying to figure out how to make it work, give them some guidance, some coaching around those aspects as well.
Hugo, how's it going for you since you can't be on site?
Well, so it has affected what I wear for work. It's easier now. As long as I have vests on, I'm okay.
So the vests.
You need to dress up and go wear a bow tie or something like that, or get happy here. Come on.
Okay. Then I'll follow your lead. How's that?
Meow.
Nice kitty.
Adam, how about for Inflectra?
We're not a virtual first company. We actually have an office, and people have miss coming in. But we also had some employees in Europe who have always been remote. So one thing it has actually done is democratize the company, because I think in the past the people who were remote were disadvantaged from the rest of the company. So we put in place some things that we didn't do before, like having a Monday check-in and a Thursday happy hour and some stuff that we weren't doing. And I think it's actually increased our engagement, because now we have the people who are remote not feeling that they're second-class citizens. So even when this whole thing ends, I think we've actually got some new things we'll be doing going forward, so that everyone in the company is more included in what we're doing. One thing that's been hard actually for us, I think, is not so much the virtual working, but because the schools are shut, some of our employees have got young kids who are like 6 or 7, and I think they've had a particularly hard time with this. For the rest of us, it's not been so bad. And one thing we did is we actually organized a virtual play date. So we had some of our employees who had 6 or 7-year-olds while we're doing the web chat on the next version of the tool and all the rest of it, we had the kids doing a separate web chat on playing with their Lego. So some sort of virtual play dates actually help people do working remotely.
Yeah, that's interesting, Adam. And that reminds me of, obviously at Coveros, we run some pretty big conferences, and this spring they're all virtual. So we've been messing around with, virtual games, virtual happy hours, other virtual kinds of activities and events, like I think everybody is. Not just for ourselves, but also because, we want to leverage some of that at some of the virtual conferences. So it's kind of interesting. And you mentioned, people feeling kind of like they want to go back to the office. I will say that, even though we're virtual, we're often meeting with customers, right? Or, Hugo and our consultants are with a customer. I'm traveling around to meet with customers and staff and teams. And I do miss that. I mean, even though we're used to being virtual, not used to just being in the house, right?
Right,
24/7.
And you
That's
guys do a lot
different
of
for
meetups.
everybody, even if you are
Right.
virtual, right?
Right, and you guys do a meetup. You do a lot of meetups, and you also have a company. I remember seeing you have those company meetups you do in happy hours. So I think that's obviously something you've lost. You have to sort of compensate for.
Kim, do you want to speak at all to any of the virtual ideas that have come about from the conference angle?
Sure. So our spring conferences, Star East and Agile DevOps West, are both going virtual, but we're having the entire conference online, all the presentations, all the interactions with all the great sponsors we have. We're 100% committed to, it'll be, we won't be face-to-face in person, but we'll be face-to-face over the computer, and hope to get everyone all the great learning and education that they always get from our conferences. So I hope you all look into coming.
We are coming. And what about for Vegas, a virtual casino?
That's an idea. Yeah, that's an idea for game night.
Right, I mean, you can't, not the gambling side, 'cause that's illegal, but if you did like a virtual casino with the games, at least maybe prizes rather than money, maybe you can, kind of cool.
That's a good idea. We will have to definitely talk about that.
Blackjack. Roulette.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question, which is, how do you think the current situation will affect the way we do business?
Who's that for?
Why don't you start, Adam?
How is it the country doing business? It's going to be hard to know what's going to change, obviously, because we're still in the middle of all this, and the world is clear after the fact. Hindsight's 2020. One thing is definitely certain is I think a lot of our customers are trying to do a lot more testing. I think testing has become really more important for the customers. Like, we have a lot of hospitals and medical device companies as customers, and they're rushing to get things out. It's interesting. What we've seen for our business is that the companies that really are in the retail space or industries that are affected more dramatically have obviously paused, but a lot of companies that are economically active are actually accelerating, particularly bio companies, hospital companies, people who are doing things that to do with transportation, logistics technology as well. And so I think testing has become more important. And then obviously you've seen with load testing, because everyone is online. The internet has been doubled or tripled in capacity, and yet it's the internet, which was designed many, many years ago to be a military defense sharing network that survives a nuclear war, has proven that it's able to sustain that. But I think what we're going to find is, as we go more online, the internet, a lot of the things, and the ability to be responsive to peaks and the incredible increase in traffic is going to be something that everyone's going to have to deal with. We're going to be an online first world, and that things will return back to normal, but some of the activities that we thought will return back to the physical world maybe won't. So some industries will change forever, and we as technologists have to be ready for that, I guess. So my rambling answer.
Hugo, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that the way people are evaluated and the way work output is evaluated is going to change. It's extremely hard to micromanage people when you're working virtually. So what you have to do is you have to embrace agile practices and break big projects into smaller and smaller things that are attainable. And then you have to put in place daily stand-ups where people tell you about what they've done, what they're going to do, and what blocks they're finding. And then people are going to have to trust people that they're reporting correctly and that they're doing the work that they're committing to do. And that will be a change for many managers. I worked in companies that team rooms, they wanted everybody to not only be there all the time, even though we were doing work that could be done from homes, but I've seen some customers who actually wanted the testers to have the screens be aimed towards the center of the room so that they could immediately see what everybody was working on. Wow. Those individuals are going to have a very hard time in a virtual world, right? Unless they put recording software on the people's computers, and then they spend a lot of time looking at other people's screens, and that's like Big Brother.
Some companies are doing that. Some of these like insurance companies, and they're crazy, but yeah, they are doing that.
Wow.
Jeff, what do you think?
I'm hoping that it makes a lot more organizations realize you can be productive and work virtually. Because we hear a lot from our customers, we're virtual first, but a lot of our customers are still like, yeah, that's great, but we want you here in our office, or we want you here with us. And there's really no reason you need to be there. In fact, I kind of joke, we had one customer that used to insist that we were in the office, and then we would go into the office, and then we would be on a call like this with a bunch of other people that were in other rooms, in other buildings, or virtual. So we were going to the office to talk to a bunch of people who weren't there. And it's this, I think it's part of it's just tradition and the way, kind of senior leadership grew up. They're used to all being together, and there's benefits obviously to that, but I think people are starting to realize that you can be very productive virtually, and it also has benefits, right? I mean, no commute and cost, you probably all heard pollution's way down globally, emit carbon emissions and all this stuff because nobody's driving. And I'm hoping that this opens eyes for organizations that you can work very effectively virtually, and that's kind of more of the new norm moving forward after, hopefully this, crisis subsides.
Kim, do you have any thoughts as well?
I've been working virtually for over 10 years, and I actually find it more productive to work virtually. You have more time because you're not commuting, but you also don't have people interrupting you coming in your office all the time. Although now at home, that my family's home, they're coming in and interrupting me. But most of the time, I actually find myself way more productive at home than I was when I actually worked in an office setting.
I would have thought that until Google Chat, because we have Google Chat at Inflectra, and that's always popping and beeping and like popping up at me like, leave me alone.
Yeah, but you can control when to respond to that. When somebody shows up in your office and enters your office, it's really hard to tell them, I'm busy now, don't bother me.
Right. When Google Chat says, hey, we've got this great sales opportunity with X $1 million, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna answer that right now. It's hard,
and then they say, just kidding, give me your opinion on this.
Yeah, I know. Like, we do have a question, by the way, Jess, who came in from David Burke from Coveros, live on the chat. I think it's actually just the question we answered, though. What was everyone's thoughts on the degree to which there will be lasting change in the software industry as a result of the current scenario of everyone working virtually? So how would software testing change in a virtual environment? So it's a slightly different wrinkle on the question, but specifically around testing. Are there any testing things that will be different because of this, as opposed to just general working? What do you think, Hugo?
Testing things that will be different.
Right.
Well, so when you look at where Zoom was 2-3 weeks ago to answer this week, 2-3 weeks ago, they were very happy, growing customers and all of that. This week, their CEO had to admit that security was never a consideration when they were building the application. And Grady Butch, as a matter of fact, grilled this guy online because he said to him, every piece of code that we write has social, cultural, and economic implications. And development teams, agile teams have to take these things into consideration. So what is going to happen now is that many of what we call the non-functional requirements are going to be brought to the forefront. Throughput, availability, security, reliability, etc. And I think what will happen also is that people are going to be much more aware in the World Wide Web of usability. When you look at what has happened to us is we have 3270 emulation character-based. Windows came, things became graphical and all that, and then the web came in, and we basically, what we have now is prettier 3270 emulation. Most things that are web-based tend to be character-based. So now the opportunity for creativity and innovation in those areas are going to come into play.
Yeah, one thing I would speak to is very interesting for us is that so when this whole thing went down, a lot, as I mentioned, some of our customers, who were in the retail space, they kind of disappeared. But we had this whole new set of customers out of the blue. So we had a sales inquiry 2 weeks ago from a virtual reality nightclub company. I'm like, what is that? And literally they said, we generate concerts in a virtual reality environment. So you wear like an Oculus headset and you can be in a live concert. So if you want to see the Rolling Stones or any band, you don't have to go there anymore. You go in your home and you put on this VR headset and you can feel like you're in the crowd. And if you think about software testing, we're used to testing, as Hugo says, character interfaces, APIs. Maybe we're doing mapping and geospatial on a 2D plane, but now you're looking at potentially 3D. How do you make sure that concert experience in your VR headset is sufficiently valuable to the concert goers that someone's going to pay money for it? And as testers, you're going to have to think in the three-dimensional world. And if you have to degrade the quality, is it within an acceptable bounds? Like Netflix had to, I think, degrade all of Europe to standard definition. And maybe you have to have some kind of variable testing where you can figure out at what point can you scale down the codec so that it's acceptable. Maybe it's acceptable for this part of the song, and as you get to this part of the song, you have to increase the fidelity and so on. So testing becomes a multi-layered, temporal and three-dimensional kind of process, not just web page, click on a link and it's an XPath kind of stuff.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed among friends is that before, let's say 3 or 4 weeks ago, upload and download speed was king.
Right.
Now, because of the load on the internet, people are realizing that they can stream high definition Netflix with 50 megabits per second.
Yeah.
But that latency is becoming a much more important parameter. How fast does the thing respond to my actions?
Right.
And the internet, as we know it, that was built for consumer use, is not used to that kind of scrutiny.
Right.
So those other quality elements are also going to change.
Yeah, and I would add, to your point, Hugo, and yours, Adam, is, when we're at home, if you're doing any kind of development and testing of consumer-oriented products, when you're at home, you're now more like the customer than you are when you're sitting in your office with great bandwidth, with connections, with easy access. You might even be on your phone, you might be on a tablet. You're now experiencing what your customers are experiencing, unfortunately, maybe for the first time, really, right? And that should, I think we always say, part of quality is thinking. In fact, we were just, one of our teams was just discussing this about one of our customers in the fact that their testing organization doesn't focus very much on the customer. They were observing that was kind of odd, right? Because part of our job and our goal in QA and test is to think like the customer, test like the customer, verify that the customer experience is going to be good. I think the fact that we are now kind of acting like the customer could help testing, be more customer focused going forward.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Well, I think I see Jeff taking a sip now. Jeff, why don't you tell us about your cocktail? What are you drinking today?
Oh, just, apple juice, something like that. No, it's my favorite local, local Catoctin Creek rye whiskey. Very good. It's local here in the Virginia area.
Are you doing it straight over ice or, sorry?
Just, yep, on the rocks. On the rocks. Cheers.
Looks delicious. Cheers. Adam, what are you drinking today?
So today, I wanted to celebrate, since we have our friends from Coveros / Techwell, I wanted to celebrate one of the high points of last year, and it does feel like another world to think about this. In Star West in Anaheim, California, we were testing out bourbon and other whiskeys last year. We did a testing on which is the best Manhattan, and we did a Bullet Rye. This is at the Disneyland Hotel. We did a Bullet Rye, a Canadian Club, and I think it was a Knob Creek bourbon, and the rye came out best. So I made a Manhattan tonight with the Bullet Rye, Angostura bitters, and some a decent red vermouth mixed in, and hopefully by October we'll actually be in real life again. It's hard to imagine, right? But hopefully we'll be in real life again. Another world.
Yep.
We're looking to toasting to that, to being in person in California, and the world is good.
Picking another cocktail to test.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have some ideas. Sazerac, I think.
And what are you drinking?
That's right.
I am drinking a spicy margarita,
Nice.
which is very good.
And what's in a spicy margarita?
Is that a margarita with hot sauce?
It's a mix that says spicy margarita and maybe just a little tequila, maybe a little more than a little tequila.
There's no sauce labs, hot sauce in there.
No sauce.
So for those of you who may not know, Jeff, Adam, Hugo, and I are all in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Kim is in Florida. So our cocktails are regionally based as well, because it's a little cool here today. So it feels like good brown drink weather.
Yep.
Jeff just moved to Florida.
I'm in Florida now too.
But Kim is based in Sarasota. So margaritas.
Yes, and it's 86 here today.
Hugo, what are you having?
I didn't hear what you said.
Hugo, what are you drinking today?
Before I was having some Jello shots, and now I need to water them down, so I'm drinking just straight water now.
What was in your Jello
What
shot?
about you, Jessica?
Oh.
What about you, Jessica?
I am also, in honor of Star West and our testing, drinking a Bullet Rye Manhattan to start the evening. We'll see where that takes me.
Hardcore.
I hope all of you watching or listening at home also have something equally delicious. Okay, moving on to another question. We have another one that comes from our Twitter feed that was sent in advance, and it is from Eugenio Elizondo of Mexico. He asks, do we have a recommend? Sorry?
I would say hello to our listener.
Do you have a recommendation for monitoring tools to complement performance testing? Jeff, I think we had talked about this a little bit before. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm going to looking for chat. There's chat. Yeah, so there's a lot of good monitoring tools out there. You can't go wrong with probably any of the top 10. If you Google, a top 10 list out there, if the person that asked this question is out there, there's lots of great products out there. Some of the ones that we use to do that, I just put it in chat.
Yeah,
you can send it if you tweet me. Yeah, softwaretestinghelp.com. So there's a nice list. It just got refreshed in the last couple of weeks, so it's new. Things like I don't know what you all see, but we see New Relic a lot, very popular. Dynatrace. What else do you all see, Adam? In terms of monitoring capabilities that you all like, there's a lot of products.
Yeah, Dynatrace is the one that I hear about a lot, mainly because we have a partner, Neotis, and they partner with them. Yeah, we don't. I mean, those are the ones. Honestly, nothing. New Relic and Dynatrace are the two that I've heard the most of. I must admit, I'm not a monitoring aficionado, but we do have the list. If I go in here to go away advert, I can share my screen quickly. So I'm sharing my screen. So you should now see the list of tools. So I'm checking the audience.
We don't know how they come up with this order, but
I do know how they come up with this order because we're on some of the other lists. You have to pay to be.
Buy it.
You have to buy. You have to buy the position on this list because we pay.
There's App Dynamics.
Yeah,
see that one.
I thought OpsView was bought by. I thought Atlassian bought OpsView. Or was that different Ops? Oh no, there's a video there. Dynatrace, Xenos, Dell Foglight. Okay,
Don't have a
Stackify,
Dell phone.
Microsoft something, OCA, IT Conductor. Yeah, this website you do have to pay to be on this website, and you pay. The higher the position, the more you pay. So
yeah, but I mean, in general, whether it's 1 or 15 on this list, there were good tools on this list that
yeah, definitely that's
certainly
true.
we've used and we would recommend. So check it out.
What's your favorite? Is there any ones you'd recommend? Like, do you have your favorite open source and your favorite
I
commercial?
know some of our guys are big on New Relic.
Okay.
And in fact, that's in our stack. So we have an open source stack of products that are pre-integrated together that provide CI/CD capability. It's called Secure CI. Also has security tools in it. That's where the secure part of that comes from. And I know New Relic is in there. Some other products might be as well. We're always adding products to it. Basically, an open source project that we maintain and support, and started here at Coveros.
Right.
And so if you're looking for kind of an end-to-end solution, a great place to start.
Right. And especially because budgets right now are obviously going to be tight because of the economy and so on. The open source stack is a good place to start. And then if you find it doesn't work for you, then move up to a commercial tool maybe.
Well, and that's the key, I think, and that's what people misunderstand. I just wrote a blog about open source tools and pros and cons of open source tools. I always say open source is a great way to get started, right? Because it's free, so it's easy to prototype and try some things out and see what you like, don't like. But the reality is, usually, if you need to scale, you need availability, high performance, you need support, you need maintenance. You need services for installation, training, things like that, and then just additional features, right? Because the commercial products are way more feature rich, typically than the open source products are. Typically, you're going to have to step up to a commercial product. So what we always tell people is, open source is a great way to get started and get your feet wet and kind of get yourself educated. But as soon as you start needing kind of real business continuity, business demands, high availability, security, all those kinds of things, usually the open source products don't support those, or they're all freemium models, right? So the open source product, at some point doesn't scale unless you buy their commercial version, right? So,
Right.
all the tools that people talk about being, open source, Chef, products like that in the DevOps space. Yeah, you can do small things with them that are free, but as soon as you try to do something industrial strength, you're going to need to bump up anyway. So that's what I always tell people is it's a good way to get started, but the reality is usually, as you mature, you're going to have to step up to commercial capability to scale and do the things you want to do. So that's what we typically tell customers.
That makes sense.
And the good thing of open source, at least for individual contributors, is that it allows you to try things before committing your organization to them. But normally what organizations will require as a minimum is some of those non-functional requirements that we talked about it before, but also support. That's normally the big item for an organization, because they have customers that will then be depending on those tools.
Right.
Yeah, and I would add as well that there are certainly tool categories that the open source is really good in, and other tool categories not very good at all, right? So for instance, in the testing space, you can go out and get Selenium or something like that. If you just want to drive tests, that might be a place you start. But if you start wanting to do test management and integrating your tests, and tracing your tests to your requirements and into your code, and then integrating automation into that, tracking, results, you're not going to go find an open source product typically that's going to provide that capability. You're going to have to step up to commercial capability, right? Now you could try to cobble it together yourself, but now you're spending all this time, right, investing in, custom code and things you're going to have to support and maintain yourself.
Right.
The ROI usually goes out the window pretty fast in that regard. So again, there's some categories of tools that the open source will get you farther than others. But in general, when you start needing to do things that are more complex and more business critical, you're going to have to look to commercial solutions. Those are where the answers are, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay. Has the current situation accelerated or derailed any trends in software testing and agile development? Hugo, you want to start?
Pair programming has become as simple as that. But the interesting thing that I've seen is that there are now several tools that allow you to actually do remote pair programming. So Visual Studio has an add-on called Live Share that allows 2 or 3 individuals to basically take control of a computer. Remote Collab has one for HTML development. And there is a tool called Code Anywhere that allows you to basically collaborate. So what has happened is that technology has come to the rescue of the physical inability to be closer together. So that has helped. That has changed.
Adam, do you have any thoughts on that?
Trends. It's interesting. One of the things that there was a big trend, I think, before this happened was automation. And everyone wanted to do automation, test automation, process automation. And I think the fact that employees are getting sick, people are working weird hours, not the same time of day, I think automation is only accelerated. That's definitely been a huge trend. Has been automation no longer is optional. You have to automate stuff because it's the only way you can maintain your viable business in the current situation. In terms of things that have been derailed, I think the biggest thing I've seen derailed has been companies that rely on experimental business models and funding and magic thinking. I think are being derailed.
Magic thinking.
I mean,
yes,
yeah, that's what, to me, that's what you're going to see as a shakeout. You're going to see the companies that have proven business models that maybe were doing well will do better, and the companies and the products that really were in search of a market will disappear. So I think that's a good thing. But I think it will focus people onto technologies and products and AI that's going to be materially benefit people. And if it's AI for AI's sake or some technology that's going to be, the share, I think the sharing economy is the one casualty in all this. I mean, before this started, everyone was saying, well, why would you need to own a car? Why would you need to own a bike? Why would you need to own a house? And everyone suddenly is like realizing, oh, I see, because I'm the only person who touches that. I mean, we've lost like sharing bikes, sharing cars, Zipcar, Lime bikes, all of those are dead. Airbnb's in big trouble. So the sharing economy, which was the whole cornerstone of the next 10 years, has been derailed. So from an economic standpoint, that's what I'm seeing. But I think AI, technology, automation, those fundamental trends are just continuing and accelerating.
Good point.
Yeah, I would add, I think there's a huge opportunity, whether we're just talking about testing or we're talking about development tools,
Right.
the ICD tools, anything, management tools, to integrate those technical capabilities with the social capabilities like we're using here today. I think the integration of the soft side into the hard skill side of technology, maybe now it's really going to happen because people are trying to do it both right now, right? But we have to use multiple products. There's no integrated environment that you can be, for instance, seamlessly collaborating with someone and maybe even pairing with someone in a way that it's all cohesive, right? Sure, you can cobble together Google Docs and this and that and video sharing, and then you've got, your test management solution, your requirements management. You can kind of cobble that together, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for someone to kind of pull the soft skill and hard skill together in these products more to support the virtual worker. Because I think we're not going to go back. We're not just going to stay virtual and completely virtual going forward. I do think it'll shift a bit. I think people will realize you can be productive, more productive virtually, organizations will start thinking, we're virtual first because, I wanted to keep fixed costs low, right? We didn't want a big office that in bad times you had to support, because I lived through .com. I lived through 9/11. I lived through financial crisis. And when those things happen, if you don't have the flexibility to pivot and, streamline what you're doing, without just cutting all your costs, which is just a killer, then, you're not going to be successful and come out of it strong. And I think people are going to reassess. You mentioned, the kind of sharing, world, and whether that's going to change. I think the people are going to reassess again fixed cost, and can we be more virtual? Is there a way to have our cake and eat it too? And I think tools that support that from a technology perspective could do very well.
I can tell you one thing that has changed in our family. We have a daughter that lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and she would talk to us begrudgingly twice a week. For the last week and a half or 2 weeks, we've been having FaceTime dinners every day.
Wow. So
what has happened to my wife's iPad is that now it basically lives on a perch, almost at 3-4 feet off the ground, and we take it with us, and we're doing stuff with our daughter all the time. And family meetings now happen via Zoom. Last weekend we had one where we had 21 individuals. If you would have told me a month ago, is that feasible? Is that doable? Yes, we have the technology, but I think what has happened is that the things that we're valuing now are changing. We're valuing more relationship. The ability to interact, just like we're doing now, is now much more important than being in a place together.
But people do ask,
I think you're right.
is this the end of getting together, right? I still think humans desire physical, right, interaction. And while it may shift a bit, we're still going to want to get together, because I've seen predictions, right? Like people are predicting what's it going to be like after the coronavirus, subsides, and people are saying, "Oh, we're never going to get together." I don't think humans are wired like that. I think that we may shift it to the middle a little bit more, but we're still going to want to get together face to face with people. We're still going to feel that's the best way to connect. We may leverage virtual technology more, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop flying on airplanes, driving in cars to see people. I just don't think it's going to shift as much as some people are predicting.
I mean, you see that because if you look at, for example, in Great Britain, they're having to tell everyone this weekend is the Easter weekend. Everyone's trying to drive somewhere and go somewhere because everyone's like desperate to, how can I do it and still be 6 feet away when I get there? And people are desperate for the social contact. Everyone's trying to find a way around it. And obviously people shouldn't right now, but it does prove that when they have got a handle on it, when there is good testing, and again, back to testing, if we can test better and manage better, and the risks of releasing, as it were, when we decide to reduce the lockdown are manageable, people will want to get back into that. I think it's like a, I don't think people are going to want to stay where we are now. It's manageable for the short term.
Kim, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I agree with what all you guys said. I think we, especially here in the States, forget very quickly. There have been lots of things that happen, and I think we'll go back to normal quicker than most people will think. I mean, that's my prediction, because I do think people crave human interaction, human touch. And I think once the fear of the virus is gone, things will be back to the way they were.
I agree with what Hugo said, that I think we're using the technology to have interactions with people that the technology existed before. We could have had these interactions before, we just didn't. And there's a mind shift that happened. So I think we will definitely want to get back to getting together in person. I can't wait to go back to my office, to be honest, but I hope I still do have that video chat with my dad over a drink that I never had before because it didn't dawn on me, or getting together with college friends over Zoom that I'd never done before. So in that regard, I think it's been kind of cool that it gives us a different perspective on how we communicate and when we communicate and what tools we use. Okay, I have another question here, and Hugo had touched on this a little bit previously, but does the current situation make it more difficult to be agile since an agile methodology assumes more interactions between people? Hugo, you want to take it?
So I think the interactions change. I've been working virtually pretty much since 2010. And prior to that, I was working at offices, and I have friendships with people at Coveros, and I talk to them more. I share with them more than I did with people that had offices down the hall from me before, that I would see only when we were getting coffee in the community area in the office. So I think what is happening is that we're the kind of connections that we build are different. So the connections are moving beyond being physically next to each other and closer to each other. And when I talk to candidates, because I do a lot of interviewing, I describe Coveros as a community of the mind. We have close to 150 channels on Slack, and they range all the way from very specific technical things all the way down to regional things, Loudoun County, Southern, etc., all the way down to science fiction and television and movies. And people make very, very strong connections. And when we have today, and when I look at the channels that we have for projects, the kind of things that we're sharing, I think are much more insightful, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to judge the output of the work based on the quality of interactions that we're having with the individuals that are collaborating on that work. So I think from that perspective, I think we're being much more purposeful. And I think that will improve the quality of the work and the quality of the product that we produce.
Jeff, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth on this one because we have a lot of customers that can't figure out how to do Agile when they sit next to each other. So now you've added in this other dynamic, right? And is that going to help? I don't think so, quite honestly. You know, if there's one thing you learn in testing, right, is as risks pile up, right, you get closer and closer to disaster. And my worry is that if you have a lot of risk just trying to work together and you're all in the same room, what the heck are you going to do when you're all somewhere else? That's going to be, I think, the biggest challenge. Now, Hugo mentioned earlier, and I agree, that if you're going to manage people that are distributed, you're not going to be able to micromanage them. You're going to have to take a different approach. And you need a way to make sure that you kind of have an idea, or the team does, as to the productivity of what's going on. I've always been a big believer that Agile is a great way to do that when you're dealing with distributed teams versus Waterfall, because you just get more information due to daily stand-ups and, you know, just day-to-day pairing and collaboration than you do, you know, in a traditional approach where you're just throwing documents and information at each other, you know, over a wall. And so maybe over time, Agile will help that problem. But I think initially I'm a little worried about how teams that already struggle when they're together are going to do when they're apart.
Yeah, to echo onto Jeff's thoughts, one of the things I remember when I was a project manager on an Agile team was that you always had the fallback of from a project management perspective, at least, is you could walk the hallway. And I always found if you walked the hallway with a cup of coffee and you walked around each team area and you kind of looked at what they're doing and not doing, and you asked what were then seemingly stupid questions, you would very quickly dive into the problems they didn't want to tell you in a status report or write in a Slack channel. We didn't have Slack back then; it was many years ago. But even whatever technology you had, you could divine and tease out of them the things that they didn't necessarily want to tell you, but they really wish you'd asked. It's sort of the unknown unknowns, as Rumsfeld said. So the question will be, in a virtualized world, how do you find out from people the things that they worry about that they can't articulate to you, possibly can't articulate to themselves, but if you were to have walked around physically and watched the way they interacted with other people, you might have teased it out of them. And and that's some of the things we have to figure out is how do we find what's going on in someone's particular piece of work they're doing, or the team that's working remotely, in the dynamic between them. What's being missed? What's the gaps? What are the things they don't know they should be looking for? They don't know what to ask for, because if there's things they know what to ask for, then they'll write those on a Slack channel or a Google chat or whatever tool you're using. It's the unknowns, the things that they don't know. That's what I worry about, how we do that.
One thing that has changed, though, is passive aggressiveness. When we were in team rooms, people will many times try to undermine Agile by creating blocks and all that. Now they're at their houses, and if you assign them something, the way they're trying to undermine is by not doing it. The problem is that now the whole team realizes they're not doing it.
True.
And then the team reacts to that and accommodates to that, and eventually those individuals don't get work, and eventually the team pushes them out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a client years and years ago that couldn't figure out how to utilize someone on their project. After a while, they just realized this person just wasn't the right person for the situation. Unfortunately, very nice person, probably very successful today doing something else. But what they were being asked to do, they could not do. And the team tried to help that person. This is kind of standard Agile dynamic. They tried to help them. They covered for them. They did extra work for them for a while. And then they realized, mentally, and I don't even think they talked about it, this wasn't the right strategy. It was burning everybody else out. And so they started to minimize what they did. And so this person became the person that went and got lunch or tracked down the projector for the meeting. They gave them basically administrative tasks
Right.
to do, because there wasn't anything productive to the team that they felt this person could do. That happens in Agile. And of course, when that happens in Agile, this is where management, leadership, right? We talk about self-directed teams, right? But if you're in a leadership role above, self-directed teams, this is one of your jobs, is to identify situations where someone's just not working out and figuring out where could I redeploy them or use them elsewhere, or heaven forbid, maybe decide they need to apply their skills somewhere else. That's part of your job, and you have to do that as a leader when you have Agile teams. Otherwise, over time, it'll get more and more demoralizing if somebody on the team's not productive.
Yeah, that's where recessions help out a little bit. But sorry.
Adam, I believe that you said you had jotted down a question on a Post-it that had come in.
Oh, one that assumes I can read my writing. One was about pair programming. I think we already answered that. It was basically how do you do pair programming in Agile? I think we already asked that one. And the other question I was, what's a tipple? But that's different.
My question, what the heck's a tipple?
So yeah, in the presentation with the event, the question that Jessica asked earlier on was, what's your favorite drink? Is called a tipple, and in Britain, a tipple means what's your favorite drink. No, the question that came in though was the pair programming question. I think we got that one already. And
Okay.
I was looking earlier on Twitter. I haven't seen anything else come in. Does anyone else have any questions that came in from their teams that they want to raise? Or anything
I
coming
actually
up?
have a good one that might be a good one on which to end.
Okay.
It is. This is also from Dave Burke at Coveros, and he wants to know, he says, the best response to a bug ever heard is it's working as coded. So what might be your comments or stories surrounding that statement? Jeff, you want to start?
We hear a lot of silly things from our customers. The feature not a bug, right? Like this. yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories about interesting things that people will tell you, right, in desperation. I just actually heard one today, but one of the ones that Dave will appreciate, because he and I were doing this assessment, is we were doing an assessment with a customer, and this person was the person in charge of QA and test. And we asked that person, just in a conversation about what they were doing in the process and everything. They were one of our first interviews, so we didn't know a lot yet about the system. And I just said, what language is this application written in, by the way? And he kind of stared off into space. He said, well, it's part Java, and it's part Visual Basic. And actually, I have no idea. That's what he said. At least he was honest. But he realized at some point he couldn't bluff his way through it. And so, you know, I mean, sometimes people say crazy things like, you know, it's a feature, not a bug.
Mm-hmm.
Hugo, do you have any funny stories in that regard?
When I was a very young software product manager, once one of the developers was doing during retrospective or during the demo at the end of sprint, showing me a feature, and it was like 180 degrees from what I knew the customer wanted. I remember me telling that guy, "Well, you live in a very different world from the one I live." Because my customers will throw me out of the meeting if I show them this. And there was a lot of truth on that, but probably I could have chosen better words. So I remember what happened and invited the customer to come and see us like 2 weeks later and show them the stuff. And the developer had the time to recover then, but yes. It was one of those learning meetings in your mind, events in your career.
Right.
Yeah, I have a
Adam, what
story.
about you?
Yeah, my story is back when I was at Sapient, my old job, years and years and years ago. We were building a software tool for the Marine Corps that was going to integrate logistics stuff from like 6 different systems, and it was supposed to be a research and development project. It was never going to be used. It was never going to go live. Don't worry about it. It's never going to be used. And so we wrote the integration with all these tools, and they kind of worked, but kind of didn't. And I remember someone telling me, like, you know, these integrations, they've got kind of bugs in them. Are we okay with that? We're like, oh, it's an R&D system. It's not like they're ever going to be used. And, you know, it's not like some guy is going to be calling me on a cell phone in a gas mask, yelling at me about this integration. Well, 9/11 happened a few months later. The Marine Corps decided to field the system in Iraq and Afghanistan for real. This R&D system, and we send a guy called Dan. We give him like anthrax shots and all, like 10 shots all at once. He gets sent to Iraq, and he's calling us on an Iridium phone in a gas mask with an NBC suit, trying to log into the Windows event log, trying to get the error messages for us. And finally, he called us and said, "That integrations that we have, they're not working right now." And I remember thinking, like, you know, when I said that we're never going to get a call from a guy in a gas mask, clearly, you know, all assumptions are out the window. That is a true story. Dan Roach, if you're out there, I'm so sorry for sending you to Iraq with a system that didn't work. I'm getting you stuck full of like anthrax shots and all kinds of crazy stuff. He's a good sport.
Very good.
So whatever assumptions you make in life, they're always going to be wrong. That's the answer there.
That's a great note on which to end. So thank you very much to Jeff Payne, Hugo Sanchez, and Kim Trott for joining us at Tipsy Testing today. And we will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.